that are getting a lot of attention right now, that there's been a lot of thought, a lot of activism from women's rights activist groups to make this happen, to design peace processes that have strong women's civil society representation, to look at different modalities of how a set of peace talks can be designed. In Syria, the proposal that there be a third party, which is of women, to sit at the table with the armed groups and present perspective. All of these ideas are fluid and need to be designed in a context-specific way, but they try to address this complexity. And what is really exciting about doing this work at this particular time is that we finally have some research to point to what happens when you include women meaningfully, equally, substantively. That the durability of these processes, when women are really meaningfully engaged, to toss around a word that we use all the time, that the durability of those processes is better, and that there's a higher chance that agreements will actually be reached even in the first place when women are involved. And that's a lot. When we're investing this money, this time, this political effort to try to end these conflicts, why are we not taking advantage of every tool in our tool belt to make sure that these processes are better, more inclusive, more durable? And yet, we still see that with a very few exceptions, women only make up, the latest data that keeps being swirled around is sort of, I think it's peace processes between two, don't quote me on this, she says to the camera. Up through 2011, I think it's 2002 to 2011, 4% of signatories of peace processes are women. Women are not even approaching participation, however you sort of count who's at the table, a sort of 25% or even the 30% that people often look for to say that there's some kind of critical mass. So no systems are perfect to get women involved. No systems are perfect to make sure that women's rights are thoroughly and properly embedded in the agreements that come out of these accords, let alone their implementation. But we do know that when we take women's voices seriously, when we take women's rights seriously, when we're doing the groundwork beforehand to make sure that women are involved in these processes, that the results are better. I have so much more to say, but I am going to stop there because I also, as I said, really want to hear from my colleagues. So they've each got about 15 minutes to speak. I'm going to try not to be too hard a taskmaster, but I will start nudging you if we go over that. And so with that, I would like to pass to Hiba.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Natasha. Thanks for the organizers, and yeah. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. I too applaud the fact that the room is full, and I'm very appreciative of those who are standing, and appreciative that everybody has taken the time to be here to listen to us. I think before I start, I cannot but agree with what Sarah has said, and that is really a reflection of the Palestinian context as well. And Palestinian women, although historically, and this is part of my presentation, of course, and it's here for you, I'm not going to go through it all because it's a bit long, but I'll just share the highlights with you, and I leave the presentation for you to look at. I think historically, Palestinian women have played some role in the resistance to the occupation, even dating back to the period of 1948, following the so-called Nakba in Arabic, which is the 48 war resulting in the huge refugee crisis. It was natural for women to become socially involved at the time. It was also acceptable socially for women at the time to be part of the charitable work, the civil society work, the support for the refugees. However, it wasn't a decision made by the leadership at the time that women should be included. So this was not an agenda issue. This was not a feminist issue. It was social participation because the Nakba befell all Palestinians. There were a lot of female refugees as well, of course, as male and female. So there was a lot of support in that context. And the same continued to happen in the refugee camps, where women also played a role, but again, not in the political sense that we are speaking of concerning the language and the pillars and the agenda of 1325. 1325. I'm getting it wrong, so bear with me. Sarah will correct me with the numbers.
It's just a number.
I know words, but she will correct me with the numbers. And the same also happened following 1967 war. More formalization, however, more awareness of women's issues as an agenda item. Nevertheless, it was not a political decision by the leadership to get women involved as women per se. But however, the situation that befell the Palestinians as a consequence to these successive wars led women to participate, and it became also socially acceptable at the time for women to join the resistance to the occupation and so forth and so on. So women did play a role at that level. I'm going to fast forward to the present day for a moment, and then we put things for you in the context of the resolution 1325. When the Palestinian Authority was formed in 1994, and we started adopting our legislation, we adopted the Basic Law, which is our constitution basically, then we adopted the election law and so forth. The Basic Law secured the rights of all Palestinians, so to education, to shelter, and so forth, these basic rights, freedom of persecution. So it applied to all members of society, including women. The election law gave a quota to women. I share, let me share also with you the fact that, I don't know where I am with the slide, of course, haven't a clue where I got reached. Here you go, but I'll leave it for you. There I am. It secured certain rights, and women also became ministers, joined the government institutions, professional associations like lawyers, doctors, and so forth and so on. And more and more women in civil society organizations, and they maintained, however, their charitable role and function. And again, this has been and continues to be until today the more acceptable role for women to play. Then we get to the negotiations. As a Palestinian woman myself, I've been involved, as Natasha mentioned, in negotiations since 1994. Most of us who have joined were there because of our professional capacity or as so-called technical staff. You have the administrative staff consisting primarily of women, and then you have the technical staff involved in the technical committees of the negotiations, i.e. the support to the negotiators. How many of us have really, and although I have a title, I head the legal committee to the final status negotiations, am I a decision maker? And I tell you, no, definitely not. Is that right or wrong? I wish it were more. I wish I were more involved in decision making. But I think the structure of the negotiating team has not reached the level where us women have been able to move and allowed to break that glass ceiling in terms of becoming negotiators. None of us have been there we've been in the audience with respect to the witnessing of the agreements, but we have not been a witness. There are, I think, a couple of other women that have reached a more advanced level, and members of the PLO committees and so forth and so on. But again, the role remains limited and negligible. I think what also, we've made some inroads, and at the same time we have moved backwards, especially now with respect to the national schism between Fatah and Hamas. The Gaza Strip situation vis-a-vis women's issues has been really regressing And the rights of women in Gaza are very grim. They suffer from two levels of, I would say, discrimination, if I may use that word. The number one is the fact that they share that, of course, with the males there and the children, the fact that Gaza remains under blockade and a siege of the worst order. So their humanitarian conditions are very, very difficult. And on top of that, we add the fact that the ideology that Hamas espouses too does not engage women in any way. So any progress that women made in Gaza alongside the women in the West Bank has regressed in terms of how they are treated. I'd like to also mention another fact. As a Jerusalem resident myself and a Jerusalemite, women in Jerusalem and East Jerusalem, us Palestinians, we do feel that we don't have the opportunities that are available to our male colleagues because of the special conditions of East Jerusalem, under occupation on the one hand and not so much under occupation. I mean, Jerusalem, for those of you who don't know, is legally annexed to Israel. However, it remains occupied territory and occupied land. And so unemployment, for example, among women in East Jerusalem is the highest in the entire area. Higher than in the West Bank,